In this video, I'm going to give you 5 reasons why you should buy a Fujifilm X-Pro1 in 2020 and beyond. Let's get right into the video. I'm not a fan of wasting time, so we're going to get right into this video. But first things first, I wanted to say a few things. I really appreciate it if you'd go down and hit the like button on this video and subscribe to my channel if you're interested in these types of videos. I will have a bunch more videos about the Fujifilm X-Pro1 coming soon, so I'd appreciate it if you subscribed, stay tuned for those, and check out my other videos because I do make videos about older, less talked about cameras. So if you're into that thing, definitely subscribe. And also, if you do want to support me, I do have affiliate links for Amazon in the description for all of my camera gear and camera gear I recommend, and even some accessories for the X-Pro1. So feel free to check those out. And if you do order something from one of my links, I do get a small kickback and it's no extra cost to you. And the same thing goes for my Artlist affiliate link, which I have in the description as well. If you're interested in Artlist, which it's an awesome music licensing platform, they have thousands and thousands of songs and sound effects. So if you need music for your videos, YouTube videos, really any type of videos that you don't want to get copyrighted for, feel free to check that out with my affiliate link down in the description. And so that's just all I wanted to say. You know, there's a couple different ways you can help me out. I'd really appreciate it. And if you don't want to, you don't have to. You can dislike this video if you don't enjoy it. So let's get right into 5 reasons why you should buy a Fujifilm X-Pro1 in 2020. So the first reason why you should pick one of these cameras up is because of the price. And so I'm guessing if you're watching this, you've been doing research and you already know the gist of the X-Pro cameras by Fujifilm. So these cameras were built by Fujifilm to be fantastic performers, to be workhorses, and that's exactly what they do, but it also means that they come at a high price. But the good thing about this camera is that it's pretty old at this point. It's quite a few years old, which means it's dropped in price a bunch like all technology does over time. And it's pretty affordable on the used market right now. So if you hop on eBay, you can pick this camera up for around $350 to $500. Probably averages around $400 or $450, which is just a fraction of what this camera costed new. And this camera still offers a bunch of great features, which I'm gonna get into in just a second. But that is the first reason that I think you should pick this camera up, because of the price. Next up, we have the size of this camera. Now this camera isn't quite as small as one of Sony's NEX mirrorless cameras or A6000 series of cameras. Those are really small and they have the same size sensor, but the X-Pro1 is still a reasonable size for an APS-C mirrorless camera. It's much smaller than something like a Canon T7i or any of their mirrored cameras. And really the main thing about it is it's really thin. So it doesn't really have a very substantial grip, which a lot of cameras have a big grip that, you know, sticks out really far. This camera doesn't have that, but it still sits well in the hand. And the fact that it's kind of tall and kind of rectangular, it really holds well in the hand and it feels really nice. And not too small to the point where it's uncomfortable to hold and it almost falls out of your hand. It's really comfortable to hold, but again, it's not too big, it's not too small. It fits really well in the hand and it's a great size. And now I'm not even gonna say that this is the best built camera and that, you know, the ergonomics on this camera are perfect, because it's definitely not one of the best feeling cameras that I've held. But at its price point and with the features that it has, it really handles well and the size of it is nothing to complain about. All right, number 3 on the list of why you should buy this camera is because of the film simulations. So if you know anything about Fujifilm and know, you know, their lineup of cameras, you know that they're really big into making digital cameras that really feel vintage. And the film simulations that they have on their cameras are a substantial part of that, because there's a bunch of different film simulations that you can go through on this camera and use that are so much more powerful and better than any like Lightroom preset or anything like that. They bake in this filter to each image that you take that really just makes it feel like it's from a film camera, which again is one of Fujifilm's biggest selling points. And that's really what they bank off of, what they create their cameras around, is they feel vintage, they look vintage, and the photos that you take can look vintage if you want them to. And I say that because you don't have to use film simulations. You can just shoot in a RAW and get nice crisp images out of this, but the film simulations are there if you do want to use them. And I'm gonna go ahead and list off all of the film simulations that are included with this camera, because I know that the X-Pro2 and the X-Pro3 added a bunch to the list, so they're gonna have more film simulations than the X-Pro1 does. But I'm gonna go ahead and read off what this camera can do. So in order to enable the film simulation, you have to make sure you're in JPEG mode. So you can't shoot RAW with film simulations, which makes sense because it's just a RAW photo. It's all the information from the sensor. So it makes sense that you can't have film simulations on that. But I also just want to let you know right off the bat that you have to be shooting in JPEG to enable film simulations. So I'm gonna go ahead and scroll through the list and tell you every film simulation that this camera has. First things first, we have Provia. I believe that's how you say it, Provia, which is the standard film simulation. And then we have Velvia, which is vivid. Astia, I really apologize if I say these wrong. I'm doing the best I can to pronounce these. So Astia, or Astia, which is soft. Pro negative high. Pro negative standard. Monochrome. Monochrome plus yellow filter. Monochrome plus red filter. Monochrome plus green filter. Sepia. And that's it. That's the film simulations you get with this camera. And I've messed around with them and they're really cool, they're really nice to use and really add to the feeling of this camera. So reason number 4 why you should pick up a Fujifilm X-Pro1 in 2020 is because of the lens mount. This camera uses Fujifilm's X-mount lens mount, which is similar to Sony's E-mount in a lot of ways, mostly because of the short flange distance. And so what this allows is exactly what I'm doing right here, which it allows you to mount a bunch of different types of lenses to this mount. So because of the short flange distance on the Fujifilm X mount, you can basically get an adapter for almost any vintage lens or any lens that's designed for a mirrored DSLR camera. Because any mirrored DSLR cameras like the Canon EF cameras, the Nikon cameras, or old Canon FD or M42 thread mount cameras, anything like that, all of those have a much longer flange distance, which allows for adapters like what I'm using right here to change a Canon FD lens into the Fujifilm X mount. So the short flange distance on mirrorless cameras like this one, and like any other cameras with the Fujifilm X mount, allows so much adaptability for vintage lenses onto this camera. And like I was just talking about, this camera gives you film simulations built in, and is meant to look like a vintage camera. So when you toss on a vintage lens, like right here I have a Canon FD 50mm f1.4 lens on here, it literally looks like it's meant to be on here. And it doesn't just look like that. When you take pictures with this, the vintage lens look mixed with the film simulations and just the usability of this camera really just makes you feel like you're shooting on a vintage camera. And so that's why I almost always use vintage lenses with this camera. And I'm gonna go ahead and link the mount adapter that I use in the description and a couple other ones for different types of vintage lenses. But I would 100% recommend picking up vintage lenses like the Canon FD lenses if you're gonna pick up this camera. But I'm kinda getting off topic now. I'm gonna make more videos about using vintage lenses on this camera and more videos about this camera in the future. So like I said, subscribe, like this video. All right, so here we are on to reason 5 why you should pick one of these up. This camera is just fun to use and the experience overall is spectacular with this camera. I really don't have any other words to put into it. It's spectacular. There's something about how this camera looks and feels and performs that really just makes it feel like you're using a vintage camera, which again, might be good, might be bad, depending on what you plan to do with this camera and, you know, I guess your stance on cameras in general. But personally, this is such a good reason to use this camera because when you're taking photos, you want to enjoy doing it. You know, obviously, photographers enjoy taking photos in general, but this camera just brings you in close to the action. Basically, everything about the usability of this camera makes it feel vintage and makes you slow down a little bit to really focus on taking a picture. This could be a bad thing depending on what your needs are and what you enjoy in a camera. And I'm gonna talk about this more when I go more in depth on this camera in a review, but this camera is slow to use and it's not as intuitive as, you know, all the new technology and newer cameras. That wraps it up for the 5 reasons why you should pick one of these up in 2020. I hope you enjoyed this video, and like I said, go down and subscribe and like this video if you enjoyed it, and feel free to check out my other videos because I do make a bunch of videos about older, less talked about, less mentioned cameras and all sorts of things like that. And again, I do have Amazon affiliate links in the description. If you want to support me, that'd be awesome if you went down and, you know, if there's anything you want to buy from those links, go ahead and do it through my link so I get a little bit of a kickback at no extra cost to you. Same goes with the Artlist affiliate link. It's a great website and I'd really recommend you even just checking it out. And if you are interested in it, again, if you subscribe through my link, I'll get a little bit of a kickback. So I really appreciate all of your support and I'll see you in the next video.